Okay, thank you. And thank you very much. I'm absolutely honoured to be joined by Jordan Furlong this morning. I've been following your work for a very long time, your Substacks, in the main, and I'm delighted that you said that you would join me on this Monday afternoon for us and Monday morning for you. So first of all, welcome, Jordan. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Rob. It is an absolute pleasure for me to be here today. Thank you very much for the invitation.
Brilliant. Well, look, for those of you who don't know your work, I mean, funnily enough, one of our marketing team said to me today, well, Rob, you know Jordan, but there might be people on the African continent and of our listeners and clients that might not know you. So I'll just give a short introduction. You are a strategic consultant to legal organizations in Canada and the United States. You are a forecaster and an analyst of trends and developments in the global legal market. And you're an author, a speaker, a commentator. Your Substack, which we will plaster all over this, jordanfurlong.substack.com, is excellent. And you are clearly an expert in the field of the evolution of legal services and where it's going. So without further ado, I would love you to, if we can, just get a little bit of bit more detail on the work that you do within the legal sector, please.
Absolutely. Thank you very much. I'm a lawyer by training and very briefly by experience. I received into the bar here in Canada back in 1995. But for the most part, I have been spent about 10 or 15 years in legal journalism. I was the editor of a number of publications here in Canada dealing with the legal profession. And then for about the last, maybe again, 10 plus years or so, I've been writing about the law. I've been speaking about the legal sector and the legal market with law firms, with legal regulators, with law schools, with legal marketers, with pretty much anybody who's willing to give me their ear. And really, there was kind of two phases to this. There was a phase throughout the 2010s where I was saying, there is tremendous change underway in the legal sector worldwide. And we as lawyers, we as members of this profession, we have to start making adjustments right now so that we are ready for it when it comes. Which had some impact, I think, not a huge amount, and then of course the world did change very conveniently for all of us, and then because we've had all the geopolitical upheaval, we have had the pandemic, we have had recently the rise of artificial intelligence, and so a lot of my work now is kind of helping law firms to actually process and deal with a lot of this change that's underway. So someone said the other day, do you still predict the future, quote unquote? And I said, not really, because we're kind of there. We're kind of in the future right now. So now we have just to kind of, deal with it.
That's a really good point, actually. And it sort of mirrors a lot of the conversations that I've had over the years. And as I said to you just off camera there, I've been lucky enough to make the legal services industry my career, or certainly supplier to it, with strategic consulting work, with smaller firms, and recruitment work with many of the majors that we would know around the world. And your time frame there, where you were talking about the changes that were happening, yes, we could see it, but I think at that point a lot of us didn't necessarily know what the changes were. And yeah, I like your point there about the can you still predict the future? Well, no, we're in it, and it's happening now. And where your consultancy work, I suppose, comes into play is how firms of each and every size can adapt and show their and work, I suppose, with AI. Well, what I particularly like, and again, we're probably going to jump around here because again, I'm an avid reader of your Substacks. And certainly when it comes to the structure of law firms going forward and what that will potentially mean for junior lawyers and senior lawyers alike, structural changes and strategies that fit within obviously it's hard because we're probably talking to an audience of one-man bands all the way through to major law firms. What do you see some specific structural changes in the way that law firms are that their organizational chart and the way that they deliver their services going forward?
I do think so, Rob, and I think the prism through which we will probably see this change take place, and this is something I was actually having a conversation with the other day with someone in a law firm, is within the legal profession, we have had this long-standing tendency to measure everything by unit of lawyer. So our work is by unit of lawyer hour, and our firms are, how many lawyers do you have? Right? Whenever any statistical study of the legal profession breaks law firms into solo, 2 lawyers to 10, 11 to 20, and so forth. Which, when you're a lawyer, of course, and you define the world in terms of yourself, as we do, then I guess that makes sense. But from a business point of view, from a market point of view, I don't think it does. And I think we're probably going to see a shift away. At least this is what I'm encouraging lawyers in firms of all sizes, from solo up to global, is to think less in terms of ourselves and think more in terms of how other businesses, including professional businesses, would understand growth, right? How do you grow as a law firm?
Yeah.
And most law firms say, oh, we just add more lawyers in more practice areas, and and so on and so forth. Which, again, not everybody wants to do that. A lot of sole practitioners are very happy on their own, but they will sort of think, oh, I need to get more clients and offer more services. And what I'm hoping to get people to think in terms of instead is, look, law firms grow and will grow in future in 3 dimensions. And these are, you're going to grow your market share, you're going to grow your profitability, and or you're going to grow your reputational capital. And I think these are the measures that we should be adopting more than we have in the past, because these are measures that reflect the way the market operates. They reflect our clients' perspectives and our clients' interests. What are they looking for? What do they seek
Yeah.
out when they are looking for assistance? So I'm very much of the view that adding more lawyers is not only, I think, not necessarily a great growth strategy. It could actually be counterproductive, when what you really want to do is you want to add capacity, right? And this is where we'll talk about technology some more, but this is where
Mm.
technology comes into play. It is where the ability to improve your internal systems and procedures, your ability to upgrade the quality and the effectiveness of your service providers comes into play. So that's where I think we will see a different. My broad prediction is that in future, law firms will be smaller than they are now in terms of the number of lawyers, but they will be larger in terms of, again, the successful ones, market share, reputation, profitability, and certainly in the number of what we now call allied professionals, people who aren't lawyers but nonetheless provide some support. A lot of law firms refer to them as staff or non-lawyers or other terrible terms, whereas I think we'll just call them in future colleagues, which is, I think, what they fundamentally are.
Yeah, the one word that jumped out of all of that, which is brilliant, by the way, but the one word is capacity. That really, really resonated with me. It's the growth of the capacity. And you're right. I mean, obviously, I've been involved in the executive search space with lawyers and partners and teams for 20 plus years now. And the answer has typically always been, let's add another team, or let's go out and get another practice area. And to be honest, I must be the only recruiter in the world who has tried to advise against it quite often and gone, you don't need to necessarily grow, because you need to grow with the right person. But I never had the word capacity in my head, and now I do. And I think that's where potentially, I mean, personally, where the advent of AI and the new technology will help grow that. And would you see? I mean, obviously, it's such an obvious thing to say that AI is going to be a massive part in legal services of the future. But do you see that being, well, technology in general being key to growing that capacity?
I think, yeah, absolutely essential. And it's funny, because had you asked me about a month ago, do you think AI is going to have a significant impact on the nature of law firms, the nature of legal services going forward, I would have said, yeah, I'm quite confident. And when you ask me today, I would say absolutely it's going to, because just in the last few weeks, we have seen significant advances in a couple of areas. And I won't go into deep dives in this because, number one, I'm not a tech person at all. I just read people who are and listen to them. And number two, it's not really essential to
Yeah.
our talk today. But a couple of areas. One, that we've seen the advance of what's called AI agents, which is essentially the ability to more or less for an AI to string together a series of tasks and operate semi-autonomously to carry them out, checking back in with you from time to time when it needs to check on something, which is mind-blowing in and of itself. And then the
Yeah.
second is just yesterday, 2 days ago, time's a flat circle, but this new version of ChatGPT 4.0 called O1, which is what they refer to very colloquially as the thinking AI, not because it thinks, not because it is conscious. I want to be very clear about that, but because it has the ability to reflect on. It takes a question, a series of questions, reflects on them, runs them through a whole bunch more internal checks and procedures before it begins to give its answer. And already that has shown significant improvement in the AI's ability to do things in terms of mathematics and scientific work and coding. But I've also heard a couple of people say, who have tried it out in the legal space, saying it is significantly better at legal reasoning than even the previous version was. So yeah, AI is. I really think it's going to be a game changer, not just for the law, of course, but in a whole bunch of different ways, and there'll be effects and consequences of that. But even beyond AI, and this is something else that I try to sort of say to law firms. I said, look, even if you didn't bring in any generative AI into the work that you do internally and externally for clients, you already use technology on a daily basis. Your practice is already significantly different than it would have been 30, 40, 50 years ago. We do legal research now with technology. We create documents with technology. We communicate with technology in ways that we didn't before. But in the particular instance of the technology we have now, what it offers us, and I really hope we can take advantage of this, is the ability to significantly amplify our productivity as lawyers. And productivity, again, it's a funny term, right? Because I go into a big law firm here in Canada or the US and I say, I want to talk about productivity. Who's your most productive lawyer? And I'll get something like, well, that would be Bob over there. Bob billed 2,800 hours last year. And I'm like, no, I didn't ask you who
Yeah.
your poor benighted workaholics are. I said, who's your most productive? Who brings the most value? Who's the most effective lawyer that you have? And law firms don't have a vocabulary for this because they don't know how to measure effectiveness or value or quality in any capacity other than how many hours did you bill and how much business did you bring in. So, so there's kind of two sides to the same coin. The first is absolutely technology, and again, not just AI, things like document automation and contractual analysis software and all these things. They offer us the ability to be more productive. But if our business models and our mental models, our cultural models, aren't able to accommodate that extra productivity, right? If we look at it as, oh no, this work that took an hour to do is now done in 2 minutes, whatever shall we do, right? Which is the traditional law firm model way
Mm.
of dealing with an advance like AI. Then not only will all the potential advantages of this technology be lost, but you'll be at a significant competitive disadvantage before too long because other firms will adopt this higher level of productivity. So again, it's as much a mental or I don't say attitudinal necessarily, but just shifting perspective a little bit. Again, to think about how effective are we, how impactful, what's our capacity, what's our productivity, how are we able to best serve our clients? That's the North Star. If you keep coming back to that, to say, if we did this, would our clients be better off? And if the answer is yes, go after it as fast as you can.
I couldn't agree more, Jordan. I couldn't agree more. I think one of obviously I've had many conversations with our clients here on the African continent, and and across different countries. And obviously, and as we talked off camera, obviously it's a big continent with 54 countries in it, and each country has a different challenge, and each legal market has a different challenge. But one of the things that you mentioned there, and I've pointed out as well, is that and I suppose you probably come across this in your strategy and consulting work, is that we're talking about an industry that for what 150 years, I don't know how long, was measured by the time spent by the lawyer on a product, and to change that mindset is quite difficult, I guess. Is that how you
Oh
find it with
yeah.
your clients?
Absolutely have found that. It's funny. I remember I was dealing with a law firm in the U.S. Doing a workshop for them several months back, and afterwards they invite you out to dinner to sort of say, let's chat some more, which is great. And I actually learned so much more from those conversations about firms and about lawyers. And so I was kind of going on a little bit about this idea of, again, with the advance of technology and a lot of the super advantages AI is going to bring us, whether we like it or not. The ability for us to bill our work by the hour, it's not that it's going to go away, right? We can bill our work by the hour as long as we want. We can bill our work by the gravitational pull of the moon if we're so inclined. But our ability to generate revenue that way is going to suffer. So we're going to have to come up with other ways to do this. And I was speaking with this one lawyer, very smart lawyer, very accomplished, obviously, and she just couldn't get her head around it. She said, but how else can I measure what I'm doing unless it's by the amount of time it takes to get me? And it's not that she's not capable of seeing that, but number one, the blinders that our profession places on us are very restrictive. But secondly, there is a legitimate issue with it. And it's one of the reasons why I don't want to say I've come around on the billable hour. I've had a rapprochement with the billable hour, which is
Lovely
just,
word.
yeah, it is at the advantage of a bilingual country. The 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 thing about the billable hour is that what is contained at the heart of it is uncertainty over the value of what is being offered and what is being bought, right? Because the
Got it.
lawyer fundamentally doesn't know how much value, in most cases, how much value he or she is providing to the client. I mean, in some cases, it's easy, right? If your client is saying, I'm suing someone for $10,000. Oh, you won? Hey, that was worth 10 grand. Awesome. Wonderful. But in most cases, it's really hard to quantify that. And if we don't know, even our clients don't know, right? So there is a real uncertainty when, so neither the client nor the lawyer can say, with any degree of authenticity and support, this is worth X dollars over the course of whatever time. So we default to that billable hour, right? So I get it and I understand it. And there are still cases, I think, where it makes sense to use that. But because we now have the emerging reality where, like it or not, productivity is coming to the legal profession and the legal marketplace, new definitions, better understandings of it, then we have to sort of think more about, all right, how else could we price it? And so the conversation I eventually had with this lawyer in the US was, in broad terms, there's a couple of ways you can look at this. One of them is, if you have a client, if this is just a one-off, the client is coming to you for something and they're probably not going to come to you, certainly not for this particular service. It's a divorce, for instance. Most people don't get divorced more than once, or even twice necessarily. Or some other kind of just one time thing, or maybe you're getting a will made out. Okay, that's fine. That is something where you can put, because you've done this so often, you can put some parameters around that. You can say, you know what, I can do that for $800 or whatever the amount might be. And you choose that number based on how much you billed in the past for it, how much you're aware other people tend to bill for it, but also how much fundamentally, and this is the really key part, how much does it cost you to generate this outcome, right? And not just the outcome,
Yeah.
but the experience. This is a brief sidebar. I don't want to get too far off into this. But one of the things when I sort of say to lawyers, what do you sell? Right. And lawyers will eventually say something, well, I'm selling an outcome. I'm selling, the clients come to me to solve a problem or to grab an opportunity or something. And if I do that, then that's what I sell. And I said, yes. And you are also selling to them the experience of getting it, right? And again, as lawyers, we tend to be very outcome focused. Did we win or did we lose? Did the deal go through or did the deal not? And we don't pay enough attention, I think, to the experience of getting the legal service you need, which for most clients is, in a lot of cases, just this side of excruciating, right? So if you are delivering to your clients a successful experience of getting the legal issue they have addressed or the problem they have solved, then you are doing your job. And you can put a price around that. Start to finish, whole thing, it's going to cost you this much, and this is what's included. Being able to itemize what it is you're selling is very useful. And coming in for a landing on this, on the flip side of the coin, if it's a repeat client, someone that you deal with, like it's a business or it's a corporation or even like a local entrepreneur, a landscaping company or a restaurant, and they come to you a lot, you can say, you and I, to the client, we have a relationship. We've been working on this for a while. Let's price that relationship, right? So every quarter, you're going to give me $10,000, $50,000, whatever, right? It's going to be direct deposit into my bank account. So you don't have to worry about all this nonsense about billing and 90 days notice and so forth. And for that, here is the list, itemized. Here are all the things that's included within that price. Okay. And you don't have to worry. You call us up, we do it. We don't bill you for it. We might dock it internally for our own purposes, but we're not going to, no interest to you, right? And if it's not on that list, it's not included. So something comes up, they say, hey, someone drove a truck into my restaurant, and now I have all these issues. Whoa, okay, let's talk about an arrangement by which we can get you through that. And that could be billable hour for a while if you wanted, right? So anyway, coming in for landing again, I missed the runway the first time, I'll hit it this time. When the more you think about moving away from lawyer-based metrics and towards client-based or experience-based metrics, the more it takes us out of ourselves as lawyers and puts us into the position of our clients and of the market and of the way in the way our services are received. And once you've done that, you are on the right path. That is the path towards success and prosperity as a lawyer, as far as I'm concerned.
You have just explained so eloquently exactly what I've been trying to say, but I didn't have the words for it for a very long time because, obviously I have like yourself, I have a unique position where the law firms largely and in-house legal teams are my clients, but I'm also a business owner of a number of different businesses. So I look at it with two hats. And one of the things I was saying the other day, and you've just so wonderfully explained there, I was trying to say to this particular partner was you need to forget thinking about the hours that you're working and think more about being a business consultant. I was trying to get across to him that if I'm presented with two, and this is the analogy that I used, I said, look, if I'm presented with choosing two lawyers to do some work for my businesses, whatever that work may be, they might be two equally brilliant lawyers, but if one not that this happens very often anymore, but if one doesn't know how to switch on a computer and still uses a dictaphone or dictates to the secretary and everything will come back to me in a couple of weeks' time and there's no real transparency for the hourly rate, or I have someone sitting next to that person saying, okay, so what does your business do? What does your business need? If this takes 10 hours, what does that 10 hours mean to you in lost revenue? What does it mean? And we use AI and we use the latest tools to get you to that solution quicker. I know where I'm going, which lawyer I'm going to, because they understand my business and they understand what it means to me to lose those 10 hours. Yeah. And what I ended with on that conversation was, and I will pay exactly what he's charging, or maybe even more for the service. And you don't ever. There's a lot of fear, and I'm sure you saw it when you first started. But AI really came to the fore in law about 2 years ago, didn't it? It started to come out maybe 18 months ago or so. And what the first initial reaction we saw over here on this continent was a bit of a panic about how are we going to charge and where are we going to get our revenues from? Yeah. And I sat there and thought, well, actually, you're probably going to be able to charge more. Yes. Because and I didn't know how to put it across, but now you've wonderfully given us the explanation. But I think,
that's exactly right, and your point is so well taken, because again, something that I've said in the past. Look, if you bill by the hour, you are undervaluing what it is that what you are selling in so many ways, right? It's and number one, you're undervaluing it, because what you're actually providing in terms of value in most cases is greater than that. But you're also putting in a hard cap, a hard ceiling on how much you can make. Because I don't care if you are Bob, the workaholic, 2,800, 3,800, you know, 5,000 billable hours a year. Sure, why not, right? And then
Go
we'll go
for
to
it.
your funeral afterwards. But even then, there is a cap. There is only so much time that anybody can put into this. And if you choose to bill by according to time, you are locking yourself into a little cage. But once you blast that cage open and say, how else might we price this? Then you can take that different approach. And again, it's really difficult, again, for lawyers, because once you move out of the hourly rate or anything related to that, you're moving into an area where suddenly, for the first time, the lawyer has to take on some element of risk in the pricing, right? The beauty of the
Yeah.
billable hour, from the lawyer's point of view, 0% risk, right? If things go as planned, perfectly smoothly, I'll make what I plan to charge. If they don't, I'll make more because I just keep, adding more and more bills. And
The
from the
beauty of
client,
litigation, right?
yeah, and from the client's point of view, that's a lose-lose proposition. But if you are thinking along with the client, having the conversation, how much is this going to save you? How much is it going, and so forth, then you got some skin in the game, as friends of mine in the pricing business like to say. And that means so much to the client as well. Because the client all of a sudden stops looking at you as a necessary evil, this expense that they have to pay. And oh my God, the lawyer, the this, the that. And suddenly they look upon you as a partner, as someone who is
Yeah.
going to accompany them on this journey. And I wrote a piece at Substack a few months back called Advise, Advocate, and Accompany. And I think in the post AI world, those are the three things that lawyers will still be able to do, will still be called upon to do. And for that, you can charge pretty much whatever you like, because now you're not charging out your expertise, right? Which, you may be a brilliant lawyer. There's a lot of brilliant lawyers out there. I've met them, right? Or your knowledge, or this, or and so forth, right? Because you can find those replicated in a bunch of areas. And now here comes AI to replicate the world's knowledge tank in this area. But what you can't replicate is you. The relationships you form, the person you are, the way in which you connect with your clients and say, let me help you along the way. That's unique. That is an unbreakable advantage if you do it well. So it's funny, I'm preparing a presentation to law students to give at the end of the month, and that's pretty much what I'm saying to them. I said, I don't know what AI is going to do to the traditional legal model. Nothing good is my guess. But if you think less about your legal knowledge and more about your character and your integrity and your relationships and your ability and your genuine interest in helping people, you will have nothing to worry about over the course of your career, legal or otherwise.
I, I, I'm gonna, yeah. I don't want to interrupt. I want you to keep going because honestly, yeah. Literally, like I said off camera, it's almost like you put your hand in my head and you write it out and you put it so well. Yeah, I think there was something I was reading the other day that summed up that. I mean, to tie in what you said earlier as well about pricing in the relationship. Is someone was talking about AI and was saying, I don't know whether it was specifically about law, but was saying that the being able to put a value on communication and empathy, finally
Yeah.
really being able to, and I think that was really relevant for law. And with what you're saying there, certainly to tell the law students, it's no longer, I'm being a bit harsh here, but you need to be a brilliant lawyer, but you also need to be able to talk to people and understand their business and tie that in back into the capacity element as well, and productivity. And yeah, I mean, we've all been there. I mean, I spent 10 years living in Asia. Where literally it was a race to who could get to 3,000 hours first, and that is there's no longevity in that, I believe,
No.
in this new world we live in. Just very quickly, because if I may, I've got a couple of other questions. I think
Yeah.
you just mentioned about preparing the presentation for law students. I do that a lot here as well. I mean, I've done it when I lived outside of South Africa, and now post-COVID, we've been taking up the opportunity to, been invited into some of the universities here, and I try to tell them as well, talk to them about how their careers are going to evolve and what options they're going to have. But it is a concern, and I'm only going to speak about South Africa here because I know the numbers, but I assume that it's prevalent in other parts of Africa and other parts of the world as well. There are no offense to the law schools, because they do a fantastic job, but I don't know what they're preparing the law students necessarily for by way of careers, and whether they're preparing them properly for what we're seeing. And then the sheer numbers in South Africa, the law society themselves said in some, and I'm going to get the words wrong here, but from some education facility every year, there's about 5,000 people graduating with a legal qualification. And the statistics, again, from the Law Society here, will show that there are only 1,000 positions for trainees. Oof. So this is something that I've tried to address with some of the universities here. But again, look, I get it. Universities are businesses. They need people to come in. But one of the opportunities we have with the law students is to talk about what we know about the advent of AI, but also what that might do for one's careers. But I think the things you've just mentioned there in terms of the way the role of a lawyer is changing is phenomenal. I've just got a couple of points I want to bring up. And again, specifically, I've been asked about this, and you may see it over on your side of the world, we find here in-house teams are usually quite good at becoming first early adopters of technology. Mm-hmm. Do you see that over there? And do you see the relationship between in-house, the client, and the practice guys? Do you see that changing much?
That's a really interesting point, Rob, because what I would say is traditionally, I have found that in-house lawyers tend to be further back in terms of their adoption of new technologies and approaches for a couple of reasons. The main one being that for the most part, their budgets are far less than for technology and stuff than you would find within law firms and outside counsel, because they are within corporations or they're within governments or institutions, and legal is always, it's an afterthought, right? And it's, again, it's a cost center, it's an annoyance, it's the department of no, you can't do that. So it's really kind of marginalized in a lot of ways. And as a result, technology, it's hard to get budgets, it's hard to get training, and because tech ramps up and advances so quickly, it's difficult. Once you've got the hang of something, oh my gosh, here comes a new version, we have to go do it again. So I have found that traditionally, at least here in North America, in-house has lagged behind. Now, I do think AI has the opportunity to change that, because generative AI, among other things, it has two massive advantages. One is it is extremely user-friendly. Right, far more so. Most legal technology is a pain in the keister to have to use. It is, again, difficult. It's not very user-friendly, not great interfaces, a lot of training. People don't like using it. Generative AI is general purpose technology. It is meant for everyday people to use in everyday manners. So you can pick it up. You don't need a whole lot of training. You can figure it out as you go along. And the second piece of it is that it is largely affordable. At the very least, the frontier models such as GPT-4 and Claude and all the others, Meta's new one, Llama, and so on and so forth, Gemini from Google, they're all more or less affordable, right? You can still get, I've got access to GPT 4.01, whatever version of it is, for $20 a month, right? Which is insanely cheap, right? So now you can still run into issues, because a lot of companies and institutions and governments especially have all the firewalls, because they, for some reason, don't want their employees to have information. But if you can get past those, then you have an immensely powerful tool. And the story I always tell about in-house counsel, I was doing some consulting work for a large bank here in Canada several years back, and talking with a couple of kind of mid-level corporate counsel there. And one of them said to me, she said, I got 500 unread messages in my inbox right now. She says, and I'm not getting to any of them today because I have so much else coming at me all the time. So they are swamped and they have just so many demands coming at them all over the place. And a product like generative AI, which has this significant efficiency play, where something that would have taken you half an hour to do, you can do it in 30 seconds, massively useful. I think we will see generative AI adopted faster on the client side than we will on the lawyer side, which again, when you think about it, it's a general purpose technology. People will use it because it's meant for them.
I think going back to what you said at the beginning there, with the differences between geographical differences, I suppose is, and again, I'm simplifying this. I'm being way too simplistic. But when I spent nearly a decade in Asia before moving to the African continent. I'm simplifying it, but money was no object. For in-house counsel, they could just go to their external counsel because it didn't matter, so they didn't have to. Whereas on this continent, it's a little bit more precious with the revenue, so they tend to be a bit more quicker on the early adopters with technology in the legal space, which I think then brings its own pressures for the law firms. But also, I mean, again, sweeping statement across the whole continent above me, is that Africa and Africans in general do tend to be early adopters in technology. Certainly places like Kenya and Nigeria and South Africa. For definitely, things like the payment systems, the snap scans, and the mobile phone usage. I think at one time Kenya was the highest of the cell phone usage, and they're very used to doing. Cryptocurrencies are galore here because it's so quick and so easy. So I think that there may be something in that as well.
I agree.
I was just gonna, if I may, one of your Substack pieces was really resonated with me, and you touched on it a little bit earlier when you were talking about the law firm structure of the future being quite smaller, and it resonated with me because I also agree. I think I wrote a piece about, and it may have actually in many ways been inspired by you, and I've talked a lot about the inverse triangle of the future of law firms, with lots of rainmakers at the top with client relationships, and then the need for less and less associates as things are done by technology. And obviously at the moment you've got much more of a more traditional pyramid, shall we say, although obviously I don't want to use that term pyramid because that'll get me in trouble. But and you've touched on it a couple of times about the, I suppose, less positions. That does worry some people. That does worry some people that I speak to, especially the younger generation, because they're sitting there saying, they say to us a lot, myself and my team, where am I going to get my experience from if there are no positions? Tie that in with something that we've done a lot of research on, and as have others, Law Trade, so I'm sure you're familiar with in New York, and LexisNexis, and ourselves, GRM Intelligence, have done a lot of work on the growth of the fractional working and or consultancy or gig economy. I mean, Law Trade's a wonderful company, and their CEO tweeted out a few days ago that 50% of all attorneys by 2027 would be working in the fractional economy. LexisNexis did their report on the UK and said by 2026, which is frighteningly only about a year and a bit away now, that a third of all solicitors in the UK would be working for themselves in the gig economy. And then we've obviously seen the growth of distributed law firms, as they are called, that are doing very well and growing. Do you think obviously the two are quite linked. Is that how you see the future, I suppose, of law, and how it's, people being a bit more individualized with technology?
I think it is absolutely a future of law. I think it's one of the ways in which we will see legal services evolve. The thing of it, and I totally get the point of view of the brand new graduate or the brand new trainee. It's like, okay, but I've come out of law school. You mentioned earlier you don't want to criticize the law schools. I will happily criticize the law schools. I eviscerate them on a full-time basis, because I think they have moved past simply being irrelevant. I think they are now actively harmful to the development of lawyers, and I have many thoughts on that, which we can discuss at a different time. But
another time, yeah, for sure.
But if
I definitely want to pick that up
you're
with you.
Yeah, but if you're a new lawyer, your natural instinct and the traditional approach to this is I have to find another lawyer who will employ me so I can learn how to do all this stuff, right? And that's fine. And the reason that worked was because of that structure that you talked about, where partners, owners, equity holders essentially leverage the time and the effort and the work of everybody else in the firm. And there's a lot more of those, right? So you basically bill out the work of these lawyers for more than you pay them and you pocket the difference. And that's why law firms make money. Okay. The promise for these associates has always been do this for a whole bunch of different years. And at the end of it, you too, we will open the gates and you can walk in through and you can be an equity partner as well. And it has been very clear for the last 5 to 10 years at least that the current generations now in the profession and those coming after them do not have as much interest, remotely as much interest in that opportunity that has been the case in the past because they have seen what it does to the people who follow that path. So there's that. But now, again, here comes technology, here comes AI. And one of the things I've written about extensively is this is going to destroy the associate leverage model of law firms because you will not be able to bill out the work of underskilled or low skilled or early stage lawyers the way you used to be able to do that because the work's not going to be there for them to do. It's all the stuff that we trained on, that we learned as lawyers, that's going to be fed into the machine. So my really deep concern, we are graduating cohorts of lawyers who are essentially unable to provide value within the firms in which they're operating. So that really, really concerns me a lot. What's the
Yeah.
solution to all that? If I'm advising someone who's coming into the profession right now, what I'm trying to help them to see is this idea, as you mentioned, of being fractional or being independent or being kind of a freelancer. I think you should embrace that sense of being an entrepreneur, of being the owner of your own business and the captain of your own ship. And because that is really number one, I think that's how that's the way in which you will be able to learn most effectively for you. It's going to make you more attractive. The thing that law firms are out there going, law firms are slowly but surely moving away from hiring new lawyers and they're moving towards hiring experienced lawyers with quote unquote books of business. I think that's short term. I think that's foolish thinking, but I think a lot of things. But if you are a new lawyer coming up, this is why I come back to build relationships. The most important thing you can, the most important skill you can develop is the ability to build positive professional business relationships with people, with companies, with organizations, whatever the case might be, right? And you do that by meeting people, and you can meet them however you want. You can be like me, an incredible introvert. I know I don't seem like it, but I actually really am. And you can work your way up to it. And I'm happy to chat with anybody about how an introvert can become a business developer because that's what I have had to do
That's
myself.
hugely valuable. Yeah.
It is incredibly valuable, and it's the thing that's going to kind of get you through. But take command of your own learning, of your own development. Recognize the fact that the institutions of law they're not serving your interests well enough. You have to grab this and run with it and take it forward. You shouldn't have to. It breaks my heart that we're in this position, but this is where we're at. But it is possible to do this. There are so many resources out there globally available to you online for learning how to do various aspects of the law, CLEs and CPDs of all kinds. And again,
Yeah.
here comes generative AI. I know this one lawyer, or I've heard this one lawyer, works in a big firm, can't get the partners to give him the time of day. He has no mentoring, he has no direction. He went into generative AI, ChatGPT, and said, "Pretend you're a partner and give me feedback on my work and help me." And it's useful for him.
Brilliant.
I think it's a little bit dystopian. I'm not going to lie, but it just tells you this is where we can kind of move to. We're in a different
Yeah.
paradigm now for new lawyers. The age in which you came out of law school, you got your license, you went to work for a number of years, and then you went from there. That will still apply to some people, but I wouldn't count on it. I would instead say my legal career starts right now, and I'm in charge of it. And I'm going to be taking this going forward and making the most out of this, building relationships, building my networks, establishing my reputation. Um, I really think that's going to be the key going forward to being a successful lawyer. And again, you don't have to have 100 clients or 50 clients or whatever. If you've got 5 clients who are willing to give you over the course of a year enough money in terms of the work that you do, then you're fine, right? You can build on that, and you can make it, you can make that a living going forward. So yeah, it's a bit of a mess there at the end, but that's kind of what I'm thinking of.
No, I'm listening avidly because it's so accurate, and it's a lot of the things that I've been sitting here milling over in my head. I mean, I wrote an article on Substack the other day that was entitled something like "Our Law Firm's Just Trying to Buy Money." And don't get me wrong, I make a living that way, so I'm happy, but I think a little bit longer term, and I think you're absolutely right in terms of. When law firms come to us and when we look through the person's book of business, and I've said to them, and I said it in the article as well, is that let's reframe it slightly. Let's look at relationships. One of the things I worked on with a disputes partner recently was, we sat there and we said, look, it's very unlikely that disputes partners have a book of business, the traditional book of business, unless you've got someone who's constantly being sued, and then you might need to go and get your business rescue and insolvency partners to come with you, because they might be out of business soon. But I've said to this particular gentleman well, then let's not worry about that. How often do you have a blank month? How often do you not get called? Tell me about how people come to you. So we try to break down, using those series of questions, his reputation in the marketplace, how often people come to him, how often he's been referred and by others outside of his own law firm. And that told me a truer story of him as a partner, as opposed to who are your clients and how much did they spend. And so I think there's an evolution there, which I think you certainly allude to. I honestly, I could talk to you forever. I think sometimes people might actually, if they read your Substacks and then read mine, they might sit there and go, these two definitely know each other. Or maybe they'll think that I've just been copying what you wrote, which I hope they don't, because it's just really wonderful to meet someone, or certainly I've been reading your work for some time now, to read through. You clearly have a passion for this industry. You clearly want it to work. And I feel the same way about myself, and thankfully some of the clients say that to me as well, that you clearly care. And I've been, it's so funny when you go back to the beginning of the conversation, when you were talking about the mid 2000s, when you started seeing the changes, and that's exactly what I saw. And I used to, from a recruiter's perspective, I used to say, we're not just a CV sender. I'm not, this is 20 years ago I used to say this. I'm going to talk to you about the relationships that this person has and how they build their business. And at that time, in some of the markets we worked, they didn't care. They were like, oh, just send. And I've always been looking for it. It's almost like I've been looking for this moment, this AI moment where the industry changes. So you can really get to grips with the people and their, and I actually think it's the legal services industries have a brilliant future. I think they have a really bright future. But I'm going to let you go because it's Monday morning with you and Monday afternoon. I would love to pick it up with you again at some point if you are okay to do that. But is there any final points that you'd like to sort of suggest to those that listen to this, who will largely be business owner, law firm owners, partners on the African continent?
Well, I get just a couple of quick thoughts, Rob, going out. I mean, you mentioned in particular the African continent, and what people in my part of the world don't often appreciate is just how massive Africa is as a continent, how diverse, how diversified it is. It is so many. There's so many different countries and peoples and cultures and ecosystems and so forth there. And it defies any kind of generalized analysis, which of course is what Westerners and Northerners love to do, right? Is to make generalizations and stereotypes and so forth. But there's no, and I know that there's a lot of challenges right now in Africa, especially if we're talking Sudan or Somalia or what have you. but there's just such potential in Africa. There's so many brilliant people. There's so many brilliant young people. There is such a wealth of resources, and really just so centrally positioned, centrally located in the world. I mean, you've got land access to Asia and Europe, and or a short trip over the Mediterranean, right? I like to say, Tangier is a whole lot closer to New York than Tokyo is to San Francisco, right? The Atlantic is a much more navigable way to access the North American market. And the whole Horn of Africa, and there's so much development going on there, so much potential. It's going to be a great century for Africa, and
Yeah.
and I think, and the legal profession can and will and should be a big part of that. And this comes back to what we talked about at the very start around growth, right? If as a
Mm.
lawyer you are focused on growth for yourself, for your clients, for your community, if you look upon yourself as a catalyst for growth, to say, I'm not just someone who's here to fight battles, although that's part of what we do. I'm not just here to sign off on transactions, and although that's some of what we do. I'm here to be a catalyst for the success of the people that I serve in the communities in which I live. And this is what we're supposed to be as lawyers. I'm fond of saying, when I get up on stage and talking to lawyers, I say, a law firm is not a pizza parlor. It is not a hair salon. Nothing against pizza parlors and hair salons, great businesses, but we are professionals. We are guardians of the rule of law. We are, or ought to be, pillars of our community in so many ways. If you look upon yourself as a lawyer in that capacity, to someone who is there to help to establish and grow and to help the community that you're in thrive, then that just gives you so much more. It puts so much helium in what you do as a lawyer and who you are as a lawyer, and it gives you a bit of a spring in your step, and it's easier to get out of bed. If you're just transacting and if you're just fighting, then oh my gosh, it's like, snooze, I don't have to deal with that. But if you are a catalyst for success, and I really believe that's the future of lawyers in so many ways, as advisors, as advocates, as accompanists, to help people get to where they are and to generate the kind of success they need, that's the future. If you go in that direction, especially in the African continent, I think the sky's the limit.
I'm going to leave it on that note because you've just summed it up perfectly. This continent has 54 countries, and each one of them is so nuanced, so diverse. I mean, South Africa alone has 12 official languages. Once you understand the different cultures, and to do that, that's one of the reasons why I moved here. Because I could see if you're going to do business in a country to truly understand it, you need to be there and to understand it. But you've just summed it up absolutely wonderfully, and we're gonna try and grab you over here at some point and get you on a plane and do a little tour, because just to end on this, the legal industry in the countries in which we've operated across Africa are wonderful, like you said, full of wonderful people that really want a catalyst for change. We also, access to legal services is massive on the continent, across the whole continent, you've hit the nail on the head there. So, for all our listeners, I want to thank you so much, Jordan. We're going to make sure that all of your contacts, well, not your cell phone, but your public contacts are listed throughout this. I'm definitely going to take you up on another conversation very soon.
That'd be
thanks
brilliant.
very much.
Thank you very much, Rob. It's been an absolute pleasure. Take care.
Thank you.